Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, March 17th. It is 5:29 a.m. Central Time. Matt Bennett, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, same to you, buddy.
I'm a quarter Irish. You never know it by looking at my name, but I am a
Yeah,
quarter Irish.
there you
We're going
go.
to start off this morning with these corn sales to China. 3 days in a row, dude. 75 million bushels in total. Another, what was it, 25 reported yesterday. This is a big deal. I think it's probably helped to rally the corn market. Is there more to come, or is this one and done?
Yeah, I do think that there's more to come. I mean, we have got a morning call with JSA, our counterparts there, and a lot of those folks stay pretty in tune with what's going on with river basis, with some of the export stuff, and basically they thought, I guess word on the street is it could be up to 4 million tons with this tranche. I don't know if it's all going to come immediately, but bottom line is, 3 straight days, 75 million. I mean, that's what the USDA took us down on exports. Pretty interesting number the first 3 days, though.
Here's the last couple of years. So prior to like mid 2020, China was never ever a big buyer of U.S. corn
Mhm.
to any material degree. We're still way behind where we were the last 2 years. Now, this last line on my chart here, if you guys are watching, this does not include this 1.9 million that we sold over the last 3 days. But it's around this time of year. Like if they're going to come in and do it, this is go time right now.
Yeah, and there's been some whispers that basically China was short. Like they needed some corn. A couple folks at export terminals had said that they had serious interest in corn here over the last 3 weeks or so. I don't know exactly when the corn was purchased. You and I don't get to know that.
Nope.
Obviously, some folks got to figure that out before the last 3 days. But regardless, I think that their need for corn was there. We're showing about 6 years in a row that they're using more corn than what they're producing, as you know. They want to have as much on hand as what they can possibly have for national security. So it's not surprising at all they're stepping in here and buying. Maybe they're worried about safrina. I don't know, but I'm not so sure that they don't need some U.S. corn along with what they're going to buy off of Brazil.
This reopening thing is the real deal. Here's a chart I pulled from Bloomberg, which is unrelated but shows that their economy is recovering. Their home sales posted their first increase by value since June of 2021. So you're starting to see some signs of better economic activity in China, and all of this is tied together in some way, shape, or form. The reopening, the recovery, corn demand, soybean demand. I mean, all of that stuff. I'd probably have to make that argument.
No, yeah, I mean it's pretty tough to argue against it. I mean, whenever it gets right down to it, you look at China. Yeah, they're talking. Well, you're going to see leveling off, if not a little bit of a decrease in population, but you're still talking 1.2, 1.3 billion people. So, I mean, whenever you get that many different, that many people, the volume of people start doing anything, it's going to have a global impact. And so, you're absolutely correct in that demand for protein, demand for everything, in essence, is going to skyrocket anytime you see China's economy recovering.
That population decline story it's not a right now story. It's like a
Right.
5 to 10 years out story, but definitely something to be aware of. And we've talked about that. We also had the weekly export sales numbers out yesterday, and this stuff is not including the flash sales to China. But corn sales were good, above a million again. Soybean sales, I'd say it's 665. Were good seasonally speaking. Wheat sales improved a little bit. What are your general thoughts? I mean, I know a lot of this, like the China wild card, but there's been a lot of talk about corn export sales and how we're not where we need to be. And now we may be getting closer to where we need to be.
Yeah, I think before the March report, I'd made the comment several times. I think the USDA will dial down exports in March, and then they'll have to bring them back up later. I think that's probably going to be what happens when you look at those export sales you just posted. Yeah, you had some in there for unknown, but China was a very small player for last week. Obviously, you come in with those type of export sales, which they weren't out of this world by any means, but they
No.
certainly were stout compared to what we've seen over the last 3 months on average. And bottom line is, I think moving forward, you're going to have to go back up on exports, especially if China stays in here. So, I mean, it's a good thing. Everybody feels a heck of a lot better about it than what we felt, when we were posting 500 or 600 for sales every week and shipments stink. So I guess I feel a little bit better about where we're going now.
It seems like for a while there was a lot of talk, generally speaking, about just poor demand for U.S. corn. We had export problems. Ethanol wasn't quite where it needed to be. And now we've gotten to a point where U.S. corn's competitive. We're selling it. Ethanol margins have improved. It seems like things have improved on the demand front. And a lot of that probably has to do with the decline in prices.
Oh, absolutely. I think with crude dropping off the board just a little bit here lately, though, I think some folks have been saying, well, maybe margins aren't going to be quite as good as what we
Yeah.
thought. But I do think that as far as everything that you just said is correct. Got to feel a heck of a lot better about where we're at. I think the 1.342 on carry, I mean, it's pretty darn tight. I don't see that getting any bigger though, and that's probably a good thing for a couple different reasons. First of all, obvious reasons for old crop, but you got to remember we got to carry that into the new crop balance sheet. And so, if we go in with no more than that, obviously big acres are going to be mitigated somewhat.
Yeah. The Black Sea grain deal expires tomorrow, although I don't know that they're going to stop shipping corn out of Ukraine immediately. There's like two sides to this. So the United Nations is essentially with Turkey and with Ukraine. They want a 120-day extension. To this point, Russia has said that it will only extend the deal for 60 days, and Russia has actually said the deal has been extended for 60 days. So I don't know if they're in agreement here, but I also don't know that shipments are just going to stop like on Sunday. That's it. It kind of sounds like it's a deal, but it's not a deal.
I know it's been a confusing thing from the get go, but as you know, Joe, anytime there's money involved, I mean, Russia's going to make sure that something happens in their
Yeah.
benefit. Obviously, anybody in Ukraine is going to try to figure out a way. Hey, how can we ship? Bottom line, their shipments have been way better this marketing year than we ever thought they were going to be. And so I'm with you. I don't think we're going to stop altogether. But I do think it's interesting if I'm someone who, for instance, is a captain of a ship for Maersk. I don't know if someone asked me to go over there and pick up a shipment over the last 6 months, I'd have been pretty hesitant to go. But regardless, they haven't had any trouble getting stuff out of there. So I don't think that they will moving forward as well.
You know what's interesting to me about this? I think people think about the Black Sea grain deal as a wheat story. It's
Mm,
actually more of a corn story. If you look at
absolutely.
USDA's projections, USDA projects that Ukraine will account for 13.5% of all global corn exports this year, only 6.3%, 6% of global wheat exports. It's a bigger deal for the corn market, even though people would think that it's a bigger deal for the wheat market. I think because of the way wheat reacted when the invasion happened initially, but that's really not the case, statistically speaking, anyways.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And so, I think that it's going to be a pretty big deal moving forward. Not only you look at this year, I mean, what are they going to be able to plant for this year? I mean,
Right.
most folks are saying they're not going to be able to plant near as much corn, as what they even did last year. I don't know if that's the case, Joe. You've got to think that's going to have some implications for the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, for sure. We do still have a drought in this country, although it has improved quite a bit. You've still got drought, of course, in your western Kansas, your North Texas areas, eastern Colorado, a lot of Nebraska, a lot of western Iowa. But this thing's improved quite a bit. If you look at the November 1st, let's go back to November 1st. It was substantially worse, and I've got the two side by side here. So we've seen a recovery in a lot of areas. USDA still says, as of last week, 31% of U.S. corn areas are experiencing a drought. That's down from 71 though on November 1st. Soybeans 23% down from 71 November 1st. Winter wheat is still pretty sticky at 53%. That number was 74 though on November 1st, and spring wheat 49% versus 79. So it's improving, but still an issue, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we continue to trend in the right direction, though. No doubt, as you get away from La Nina, we officially saw the end of it, whatever that means. But regardless, we're moving into neutral, and so El Nino, you name it. I mean, the thing is that you're probably going to end up healing up the Western Corn Belt as you
Yeah.
transition into an El Nino. That's just the way that the environment works. And so, if that's the case, a couple things come to mind. Obviously, it gives you the chance for more states to participate in a potential big time yield like Illinois saw last year with that 214. If you do, I mean, Joe, I don't know what the national yield would be, but certainly it could be a new record fairly easily with the type of genetics we're planting. The other thing is something you and I have talked about several times, but if you heal up pastures in the Western Corn Belt, it's going to be pretty interesting for cattle on feed moving forward.
Let's look at this real quickly while we're on the topic of crop prospects. There's a lot of snow up north, and it's been cold, and there's a lot of snow on the ground. I've had a lot of comments and observations from farmers in these northern areas that, Joe, it's going to be late spring. There's already guys talking about prevent plant. There's already guys talking about switching acreage. What do you make of this?
Joe, I was just west of Mankato 2 days ago, and I'll tell you what, there was plenty of snow where I
Yeah.
was at. There was still some black ice on the road. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I drove actually from home to northeastern Iowa up to Mankato, did a couple meetings in Minnesota, asked producers, are you guys worried about spring weather? And they said, yeah. Actually, after this last snowstorm, we got a little bit more concerned. And so
Yeah.
even those guys are concerned. But you have snow on the ground whenever you're in mid March. Obviously, it's something that you've got to pay attention to. USDA is assuming low prevent plant acres at this time.
Yeah.
My thought process is, what if you end up with, I don't know, even you lose 3 million acres of corn with the kind of balance sheet that we're carrying in. It could be a pretty big deal, because even if you have a pretty darn big yield and you're still looking at 1.5 or lower, I think that the market's going to say good night. We got to build stocks at some point. So I do think that it can be a supportive thing. It can kind of allow you to hold on to this market not going away from you for maybe another year, which would sure
Yeah.
be a nice thing to see.
Yeah, the kind of like growing season trade is really going to kick off, I think, with that March 31st prospective plantings report. That's like the unofficial kickoff to the market actually paying attention to crop prospects, at least in my view. Let's jump to the Bloomberg Commodity Index, which is under quite a bit of pressure. We traded the lowest level in this index since since January of 2022 this week, so pre-invasion. And this index, if you guys are watching the chart on my screen, this is a basket of commodities. The weightings go like this: it's 30% energies, 23% grains, 16% industrial metals, 19% precious metals, 7% softs, 5% livestock. Commodities are in a bear market. I mean, corn, soybeans, and wheat may be able to do something different, but commodities as an asset class have been in bear market territory for months now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think, though, with a lot of the concern, obviously, you've got some of the issues with banks this week, a lot
Yeah.
of talk about what's going to happen there. But I don't know. Typically, commodities are a safe haven, and so you would think maybe this thing would catch hold somewhere in here. But at the same time, you're right. It's undeniably in a bear market. So the trend is certainly lower at this time. I mean, is it going to be one of these things where all of us are worried about grains participating to a great degree? We already have. Right now, I guess I'm starting to feel a little more optimistic about prices than what I have, I guess, for several weeks. But with that being said, what you just showed us certainly needs to be a concern for anyone who's concerned about commodity prices.
When you get this goofy stuff like what we saw with the banks this week, you get into what we call like a risk off environment in the markets. And what a risk off environment is it's a flight to safety. It's an effort to protect capital among large money managers in particular. So protecting capital, does that mean you buy crude oil or you buy corn? No. It means you sell anything that you're long, you go to cash, you're probably not buying much of anything. So we saw some of that this week with this bank stuff, but that could change really quickly. I know like the crude market in particular has really been under pressure, and I think crude and natural gas are the two biggest weightings in that index, and both of those markets have been pretty ugly. Crude's like the commodity market that like nobody's bearish, but it goes down every single day.
Yeah, I thought that Monday, what was interesting to me, I agree with everything you just said, but the flight to gold and silver on Monday was just incredible. I mean, silver was up 1.4, 1.5 most of the day. And so, some folks were going and saying, hey, I think I'm going to switch over to some currencies here. And with what you just said, uh, New York Harbor was the lowest we've seen since
Yeah.
a year ago, January. So, if I'm a grower and I'm sitting here thinking, well, I'm going to go ahead and hedge off some of my diesel fuel. I mean, I'm not saying you step in and you buy all of it, but I'd rather buy it at a 1 year low than what I would whenever we're 50 cents above that. So, a person probably ought to at least keep that in mind.
There's still geopolitical risk for sure. I mean, it seems like things have eased for the moment in regard to like Ukraine and Russia, but that stuff could pop up really quickly, especially as we get into spring and summer. The one thing about gold and silver that I'll say real quickly, I know this isn't a precious metal show, but gold and silver have proven themselves to be not inflation hedges, but they are like flight to quality items. Like those
Yeah.
markets did not act well during the big time inflation of
Yeah.
21 into 22. They didn't at all. But it seems like now when you get these crisis situations, like gold and silver are still kind of a safe haven. Let's jump to Argentina. So the grain exchange there slashing production estimates again. They're down to 25 million metric tons in soybeans. USDA is at 33. We thought probably a couple weeks ago, or we had an idea maybe that it was just a race to the bottom in terms of estimates, but now it appears as if this is the real deal, that they have half of a soybean crop.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, you hear a couple people down there talk about it, and I read an article a couple days ago, and one of the experts said, really, we don't have a year to compare this to. I mean, we've had a lot of years where we've had bad weather, but then we end up getting bailed out at some point or another. But this is literally the worst weather pattern that we've ever seen for the Argentine crop.
Yeah.
So, if you go down to 25, original estimate was 51. Yeah, I understand that. You take I don't know, Brazil from 129 to, let's call it 153. So you go up 24 tons. I mean, you take this thing down from 51 down to 25, and you're 26 from the original estimate. So you're probably not going to have much more total production out of South America, like we have talked about a couple times, Joe.
Yeah.
We said, oh, it'll be fine, and I did. I said that all winter. But I wasn't expecting to have half a crop. I mean,
Yeah.
when's the last time you saw a major grower anywhere in the world have half a crop of anything? It's
Lightest soybean crop in
deal.
Argentina since the 1999-2000 marketing year, which was like, I mean, that was an eternity ago. So it's an absolute disaster there. The cattle market rebounded slightly yesterday. Cash has been okay. We've got a cattle on feed report today. It seems like we're just kind of in correction mode. That's the way I see it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think the market got plenty hot, and I think people just woke up one day and said, "Good Lord, maybe we need to back off the brakes, pump the brakes a little bit." But I don't know. I mean, you look at what feeders did yesterday when they broke support. Man, they just took it on the chin. But as far as fats go, I think long term it's pretty hard to sell them. Maybe you take a little more heat. I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't be selling them right here.
I think this week they probably got wrapped up in that risk off trade just a little bit. I mean, they'd done nothing but go higher. A lot of people were long those markets and in a speculative type manner. And when you get these outside issues and you think the world's falling apart, it's just get me out. It's just that kind of trade,
Right, and taking profit. I mean, look at what kind of profit some of those folks took off the table. I mean, when you were long cattle over the last couple months, I mean, you did nothing but print money, and so I don't have any issue taking longs off the table when I'm making that kind of money.
Outside markets fairly quiet this morning, guys. U.S. dollars just a little bit lower. Stock market's off marginally. Gold's up $11. Crude oil attempting to come back 69.31 in the April WTI. That's up almost a buck. Matt, have a nice weekend. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Absolutely. You have a good weekend too, bud.
See ya.